Hello and welcome to our special live coverage of the President's budget speech. In just a few moments, President Lee Jae-myung will speak at the National Assembly to seek bipartisan support from lawmakers on next year's budget proposal. He's expected to outline the objectives of a spending plan worth 728 trillion Korean won, or around $510 billion US, and call on both ruling and opposition parties for its swift passage. Now, that's about an 8% increase from this year, surpassing the 700 trillion Korean won mark for the first time in South Korea's history. Now, the proposed budget allocates a record amount for research and development, with a particular focus on artificial intelligence, as part of the government's efforts to revitalize the domestic economy and foster new growth engines. This will be the president's second budget speech since taking office in June, following his first one in late that month on the supplementary budget. During today's speech, the president is also expected to explain the outcomes of the recent APEC leaders meeting held in Gyeongju and ask for the parliament's cooperation on follow-up measures. He's likely to say that passing the expanded budget for next year is needed to incorporate the achievements of APEC into national policy. So again, we're still waiting for the president to deliver his speech at the National Assembly. In just a few moments, he will speak at the parliament to seek bipartisan support from lawmakers on next year's budget proposal. He's expected to outline the objectives of a spending plan that's worth 728 trillion Korean won, or around $510 billion US, and call on both ruling and opposition parties for its swift passage. Now, that amount is about an 8% increase from this year, surpassing the 700 trillion Korean won mark for the first time in South Korea's history. The proposed budget allocates a record amount for research and development, with a particular focus on artificial intelligence, as part of the government's efforts to revitalize the domestic economy and foster new growth engines. Now, this will be the president's second budget speech since taking office, following his first one in late June on the supplementary budget. And during today's speech, the president is also expected to explain the outcomes of the recent APEC leaders meeting recently held in Gyeongju and ask for the parliament's cooperation on follow-up measures. He's likely to say that passing the expanded budget for next year is essential to incorporate the achievements of APEC into national policy. So while we still wait for President Lee Jae-myung's budget speech at the National Assembly, he will speak at the National Assembly soon to seek bipartisan support from lawmakers on next year's budget proposal. Now, President Lee is expected to outline the objectives of a spending plan worth over 700 trillion Korean won. Now, that's around $510 billion US, and the president will call on both ruling and opposition lawmakers for its swift passage. Now, the total amount is about an 8% increase from this year's budget plan, surpassing the 700 trillion won Korean mark for the first time in the country's history. And the proposed budget allocates a record amount for research and development, with a particular focus on AI, as the government aims to improve and revitalize its domestic economy and foster new growth engines. And this will be the president's second budget speech since taking office in June, following his first one on the supplementary budget that he delivered in late June. Now, during today's speech, the president is also expected to explain the outcomes of the recent APEC leaders meeting recently held in Gyeongju and ask for the parliament's cooperation on follow-up measures. Now, the president's also likely to say that the passing of the expanded budget that's over 700 trillion Korean won for next year is essential to incorporate the achievements of APEC into national policy. So again, we are still waiting for the president to deliver his remarks at the National Assembly, where he will seek bipartisan support from lawmakers from both sides on next year's budget proposal. He's expected to give details on the objectives of a spending plan that's worth over 700 trillion Korean won, or around $510 billion US dollars, that is, and call on both ruling and opposition parties for its swift passage. Now, the total amount is around a 8% increase from this year's budget proposal, surpassing the 700 trillion Korean won mark for the first time in South Korea's history. It appears the president is about to deliver his speech. We'll come back right afterwards. So on the screen, we are seeing the plenary hall at the National Assembly while lawmakers wait for the president to give his speech on next year's budget proposal. He will seek bipartisan support from lawmakers today on next year's budget plan that's expected to be worth over 700 trillion Korean won, around $510 billion US dollars, that is, and call on lawmakers at the National Assembly for its swift passage. The total amount is about an 8% increase from this year, and this is the first time that the budget proposal has surpassed over the 700 trillion Korean won mark and this is the first time in South Korea's history that the total amount is going over 700 trillion Korean won. The budget for next year allocates a record amount for research and development, with a particular focus on artificial intelligence, as the government plans to revitalize the domestic economy and foster new growth engines. This will be President Lee's second budget speech since taking office, following his first one in late June on the supplementary budget. We see the president entering the plenary hall at the National Assembly now, shaking hands with lawmakers as he walks in. So again, this will be the president's second budget speech since he took office in June. And during today's speech, the president is also expected to explain the outcomes of the recent APEC leaders meeting that was held in Gyeongju, where the president also held summits with U.S. President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping, along with other world leaders. President Lee is also likely to say that passing the expanded budget for next year is essential to incorporate the achievements of APEC into national policy. So this next year's budget proposal is expected to be worth over 700 trillion Korean won for the first time in South Korea's history. We see the president walking into the plenary hall, and we're still waiting for him as he walks in to take the podium and deliver his speech on next year's budget proposal. We see him now shaking hands with lawmakers as he walks in. It appears that he'll deliver his speech now. We'll come back right afterwards.
좀 허전하군요.
Well, we're missing people here.
네. 존경하는 국민 여러분,
Honorable fellow citizens,
우원식 국회의장님과
Speaker Woo Won-sik, and members of the National
새
Assembly.
정부 출범 이후 첫
It is deeply
정기국회에서
meaningful for me to personally present next year's government budget at the first regular session of the National Assembly since the launch of the new administration.
예산안 설명에 앞서서
Before explaining the budget, I would like to express my profound gratitude to all of our people who joined forces for the success of APEC in Gyeongju. Thank you so much. Thanks to the support of our citizens and the cooperation of the National Assembly, the Republic of Korea has been able to firmly establish itself as a responsible global nation leading the world's prosperity and exchange and cooperation. For the first time at the APEC leaders meeting, we agreed to work together to address the common challenges facing humanity, including AI and low birth rates and population aging, and by explicitly identifying the cultural and creative industries as a new growth engine for APEC, we solidify the foundation for the sustainable growth of K-culture going forward. Amid global attention, by bringing about the Gyeongju Declaration, the Republic of Korea was able to lead the role of advancing exchange and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific region and promoting peace in the region. In particular, through the Korea-US summit held during APEC week, we concluded tariff negotiations with the United States, thereby easing uncertainty in our economy. By securing tariff levels equal to those of our competitors in our flagship export sectors, automobiles and semiconductors, we laid the groundwork for competing on a level playing field. Within the U.S.-bound investment package, we set annual investment ceilings to minimize the impact on the foreign exchange market that many were concerned about. And in the process of selecting and operating investment projects, we also secured multi-layered safety mechanisms to increase the likelihood of recovering invested funds. In addition, through progress in consultations on supplying nuclear fuel for nuclear-powered submarines, we further solidified the foundation of self-reliant national defense, and by creating a groundbreaking opening for uranium enrichment and reprocessing of spent nuclear fuel, we've been able to strengthen future energy security. Through the Korea-China summit, we agreed to fully restore Korea-China relations and to once again move forward together on a path of pragmatism and win-win cooperation as strategic cooperative partners. Above all, sharing the consensus that people's livelihood is the utmost importance, we concluded 6 MOUs, including a 70 trillion won currency swap agreement between the two central banks in cooperation to counter transnational scam crimes. I'd like to say that we poured in everything, heart and soul, to achieve the best results even in the worst situations. Going forward as well, based on pragmatic diplomacy centered on national interests, the government will strengthen the Republic of Korea's national power and further enhance our standing. Today marks exactly 5 months since I took the presidential oath of office. Over the past 5 months, we have approached our tasks with an extraordinary resolve to overcome the cold wave hitting people's livelihoods and the economy in the wake of unlawful martial law, and fortunately our economy has emerged from a state of emergency. Consumer sentiment is reviving, and the economic growth rate, which retreated into negative territory in the first quarter of this year, rebounded to 1.2% in the third quarter, marking the highest level in 6 quarters. The stock index also surpassed 4,000 mark. Thanks to the cooperation of our citizens, the geopolitical, governance, and market transparency risks that had been constricting stock prices have been partially alleviated, and policies for the industrial economy, including AI, have gradually begun to take hold. However, to rest or be complacent at this point would be far from appropriate for the situation we face now. We stand at a critical juncture where we must seek national survival amid a reorganization of the international trade order of the likes of which we have never experienced before, and in the face of great wave of AI transformation. If we fail to read the changes and merely follow behind others, we will endlessly be falling behind. But if we lead the change and move one step ahead, we can enjoy boundless opportunities. Just as we have transitioned from an agrarian society to an industrial one, and one from industrial to information society, the transition to AI society is inevitable. In the era of industrialization, being a day late meant falling a month behind. In the information age, a day late would be a year falling behind, but in the AI era, being a day late means falling a generation behind. Regrettably, the previous administration not only wasted precious time, but even drastically cut the R&D budget, regressing into the past. Because our start was late, from now on we must steadily increase our speed so that by catching up with the front runners, opportunities will also open for us. Just as President Park Chung-hee laid the highways of industrialization and President Kim Dae-jung opened the highways for informatization, we must now build the highways of the AI era and open a future of takeoff and growth. The 2026 budget proposal prepared by the government is precisely the Republic of Korea's first budget to open the AI era. All government spending comes from the taxes paid by our people, and as the sweat and tears of each and every citizen are imbued in those taxes, we have striven to ensure that not a single one is wasted. We boldly allocated funding essential to prepare for the future while drastically cutting spending that is unnecessary or not urgent. Including low performance, low efficiency expenditures, we cut spending by a record 27 trillion won, and we made all details transparent so the people can properly monitor and exercise their sovereignty. The government set total expenditures for 2026 at 728 trillion won, an 8.1% increase from this year. As this is a strategic investment that considers both future growth and fiscal sustainability in the AI era, we ask for the active cooperation of the National Assembly. Now, I'd like to explain the key directions of next year's budget proposal. First, we will significantly expand investment to open the AI era and firmly strengthen the foundation for growth. We have allocated a total of 10.1 trillion won for a great transformation aimed at leaping into the ranks of the world's top 3 AI powers. This is more than 3 times this year's budget of 3.3 trillion won. Of this, 2.6 trillion won will be invested into the introduction of AI across all sectors, industry, life, daily life, and public sector, and 7.5 trillion won will be invested in talent development and infrastructure building. First, to attain status as the leading physical AI nation, we will leverage our country's manufacturing capabilities and data to concentrate investment in priority projects. Rapidly to achieve an AI transformation focused on major industrial sectors such as robotics, automobiles, shipbuildings, and so on, we will invest approximately 6 trillion won over the next 5 years. With this budget, we will create fiscal AI regional hubs in each metropolitan area in connection with region-specialized industries, and through large-scale R&D and demonstration projects, we will promote AI-based regional innovation. We will support the rapid application of AI to 300 everyday close-to-life products such as in biohealth, housing, and logistics, and we will expand the introduction of AI in the public sector with a focus on welfare, employment, taxation, and new drug review. Next, we will also make bold investments in talent development and the construction of core infrastructure. We will train 11,000 advanced professionals to strengthen AI competitiveness, and through age-tailored education, support every citizen in being able to use AI proactively. We will purchase an additional 15,000 high-performance GPUs, the key components that determine competitiveness in the AI era, so that we can secure the government's goal of 35,000 units ahead of schedule. As NVIDIA has decided to supply 260,000 GPUs to Korea, private domestic companies will have no difficulties in securing GPUs. AI content and defense industry, these advanced strategic industries, for the core technologies to be developed, the R&D investment into that has also been expanded by 19.3% to a record 35.3 trillion won. Over the next 5 years, we will create 150 trillion won National Growth Fund to foster strategic advanced countries and ensure that the benefits of growth are shared by our citizens. In the AI era, the importance of culture can only grow far greater than now. To further strengthen the power of our culture that the world is watching, we will spare no investment in K-culture. We will expand contributions to the K-Content Fund by 200 billion won to invest in the cultural content industry. We will support young creators so that they can devote themselves to creative activities. To spur booms in K-food and K-beauty linked to the Korean wave, we will greatly expand export vouchers and financing support, reinforcing assistance across every stage of the value chain, from production to sales to distribution. AI technology is also changing the landscape of defense industry. By discovering startups with advanced technologies and investing R&D, we will nurture the defense industry into a core manufacturing sector of the AI era and lay the groundwork to become one of the world's top 4 defense powers. To this end, next year's national defense budget has been set at approximately 66.3 trillion won, an 8.2% increase from this year. We will reorganize conventional weapon systems into the most cutting-edge systems befitting the AI era, swiftly transform our military into an elite, strong force, dramatically strengthen our defense capabilities, and accelerate and realization of self-reliant national defense. For the Republic of Korea, which spends a defense budget amount to 1.4 times North Korea's annual GDP and is assessed as having the world's 5th-ranked military power, to rely on others for national defense is a matter of national pride. Second, we will provide robust protection for the lives of the vulnerable and firmly safeguard the lives and safety of our citizens. While new technological advances contribute to improving humanity's quality of life, they also cast shadows where gaps widen. It is the state's basic duty to protect the socially weak and vulnerable, who are the first and most severely affected by the shocks of changing times. To establish a stable income base for low-income groups, we will raise the standard median income by an all-time high of 6.51%, so that for a 4-person household, more than 2 million Korean won per month will be provided as basic livelihood benefits. We will expand the number of beneficiaries of day activity services for persons with developmental disabilities and greatly increase jobs for persons with disabilities to solidify the foundation for their social participation and independence. We will also spare no effort to ensure the safety of our citizens from various accidents and disasters. No longer anyone should be injured or lose their life at workplaces. We will increase the number of labor inspectors by 2,000 and establish worksite guardians to focus on preventing industrial accidents. Sectors with frequent industrial accidents, such as construction and shipbuilding, we will subject to continuous on-site inspections. For 17,000 small business owners and construction sites, we will support the expansion of safety facilities. For disaster and calamity prevention and rapid response, we have allocated a total of 5.5 trillion won, an increase of 1.8 trillion won compared to the previous year. We will now build a society with strong fundamentals in which no citizen is left alone in face of crises to livelihood or life. Fundamentally, we will do our utmost to establish peace on the Korean Peninsula. If peace is shaken, democracy, the economy, and the safety of our citizens cannot help but be threatened. We will make bold and magnificent efforts to restore trust and build a foundation for dialogue and cooperation between the two Koreas. We will continue efforts to ease military tensions around the DMZ, and through the END initiative, exchange, normalization, and denuclearization, we will open a new era on the Korean Peninsula of peaceful coexistence and shared growth. Lastly, along with meticulous life cycle support, we will actively pursue balanced development. In the AI era, everyone must be a protagonist and every region must be a center. First, with the age-specific tailored support, we will actively respond to demographic changes. To lift the birth rate, we will expand the age for child benefit payments from under 7 to under 8 in 2026, and extended to under 12 during my term. We will establish the Youth Future Savings Program so that when low-income young people save, the government will provide matching contributions of up to 12% to support asset building for youth. So that seniors facing difficulties in daily life can spend their later years without inconvenience, we will expand community-based integrated care nationwide, and we will increase senior jobs from 1.1 million to 1.15 million to broaden opportunities for social participation. To reduce the cost of living burden on our people, we will introduce a flat-rate public transport pass to significantly lower transportation costs. We will support small business owners in difficulty through a provision of management stability vouchers and the issuance of 24 trillion won in regional gift certificates. In formulating this budget, the government has fully introduced a fiscal principle of preferential treatment for localities so as to overcome the current structure entrenched by a single-pole Seoul metropolitan system and to open a new era of 5 poles and 3 special zones with regions at the center of growth. To ease concentration in the capital area and to achieve balanced national development, we will provide thicker support the farther from the capital region a locality is. As part of this, we will ensure that 7 fiscal programs, including child benefits and senior jobs, provide greater support in non-capital regions. In selecting other government-funded projects, we will continue to expand local priority and local preference. For residents of depopulating areas, we will provide a monthly rural basic income of 150,000 won. In connection with regional strategic industries, we will foster flagship national universities as hubs of regional industry academia research cooperation, and we will establish a package-type support system that encompasses undergraduate, graduate, and research institutes. We have also greatly expanded the scale of block grants, through which local governments can decide projects on their own according to local conditions by roughly threefold to 10.6 trillion Korean won, thereby enhancing the autonomy of local government administration. Proud citizens who have built today's Republic of Korea, Mr. Speaker and members of the National Assembly, Next year will be the historic starting point, one that opens the AI era and prepares for a new century for the Republic of Korea. Let us work together so that the future ahead will not be a world filled with despair and anxiety, but one brimming with hope and opportunity. I believe in the latent strength of our people. That is why I am confident. I'm convinced that there is nothing we cannot accomplish if our people unite. The same people who, from the ruins of war, achieved the miracle on the Han River and overcame the IMF foreign exchange crisis through the gold collecting campaign. Just as we successfully achieved industrialization and informatization, together with our great people, we will throw wide open the doors to the AI era. For the future of the Republic of Korea, the government will listen with an open mind to the National Assembly's proposals and accept good alternatives at any time. Although differences in positions exist between the ruling and opposition parties, and we are seeing such regrettable situations, I believe that the sincere intention to serve the people and the nation is no different. I ask for bipartisan cooperation so that this budget bill will be passed within the statutory deadline and the Republic of Korea can move toward a new future. I look forward to the swift finalization and close deliberation of the 2026 budget. Thank you.
Now, that was President Lee Jae-myung delivering a speech on South Korea's budget proposal for next year at the National Assembly. We see him now walking out of the plenary hall at the National Assembly, shaking hands with lawmakers from both sides. So President Lee Jae-myung has been seeking bipartisan support from lawmakers from both the ruling party and the opposition party on next year's budget proposal. Now, that's worth over 700 trillion Korean won, which is around more than 500 billion US dollars. So a lot of that budget will be allocated for research and development with a particular focus on artificial intelligence, as the government seeks to revitalize the domestic economy and foster new growth engines. So this was the president's second budget speech since he took office in June. And today he promised support for small businesses as well as more job opportunities for elderly people. And of course, for research and development, especially artificial intelligence. He also vowed for more support for those in need, especially children and those in low-income households. He also touched upon the outcomes of the recent APEC leaders meeting in Gyeongju and asked for the parliament's cooperation on follow-up measures. So we see the president walking out of the plenary hall at the National Assembly, shaking hands with lawmakers as he leaves after he delivered a speech on next year's budget proposal. That's worth over 700 trillion Korean won, which is over 500 billion US dollars. And President Lee today called on both ruling and opposition parties for the budget proposal's swift passage. Now, the total amount's about an 8% increase from this year's budget plan, and the president said promised that a lot of the budget will go to research and development, particularly the artificial intelligence and the robotics industry, as the government seeks to revitalize the domestic economy and foster new growth engines. The president also promised more job opportunities for elderly people, and he also said he will provide more support to those in need, especially those in the low-income households. So again, the president is now getting ready to leave the plenary hall at the National Assembly after delivering a speech on next year's budget proposal, where as he seeks more support, bipartisan support from lawmakers from both the ruling party and the opposition party. So again, next year's budget will be worth over 700 trillion Korean won. This is the first time in South Korea's history that the budget proposal is over this amount. This is around over 500 billion US dollars, which is about an 8% increase from this year's budget plan. So the president said the government will provide more support to the research and development for researchers, as the country plans to develop the artificial intelligence industry as well as the robotics industry. So we see the president now getting ready to leave the plenary hall after delivering a speech on the budget proposal. So that was South Korean President Lee Jae-myung at the National Assembly unveiling details of South Korea's budget proposal for next year while seeking bipartisan support for the plan. For more on this, we're joined today by Professor Song Soo-young, professor at the College of Business and Economics at Chungang University. Professor Song, thanks for joining us this morning.
Yeah, good morning to you, and thank you for inviting me.
Good morning. So we just heard the president speak about next year's budget plan that's worth over 700 trillion Korean won. What's your overall assessment of his address today?
Yeah, this is one of the steepest rise in the nation's history, the budget increase, and that have surpassed 700 trillion Korean won. And in terms of the growth rate against 2025, and the year before was 3.2% increase and 2.8% increase respectively. So this is quite impressive, very expansionary budget, clearly. But I wonder whether it is the effect on the GDP against over the debt level is going to be hovering around lower than 50%. So I expect the GDP over debt level should be bigger than, or we can afford more than 50% of the GDP debt ratio. And also overall, I got the impression that is quite biased to the AI-related spending and the investment and the AI-related education. So, to that regard, this sounds like a supply-side effect to lead the economic growth of the economy, rather than relying on some demand-side effect. So, the demand-side effect clearly could be fostered by the increase of the welfare spending, but relatively the welfare spending for elderly people and some livelihood increase for their basic livelihood payment would be of help, but I don't think it has a very big impact over the economic growth. So AI would be the workhorse, the primary workhorse to lead Korean economy. So, but AI, in terms of AI prospect, is always subject to uncertainty. So to that regard, currently we have a very optimistic view, but we have to wait and see how this AI plan will be played out in details for the coming several months and the next year.
Right. Professor Song, like you mentioned, a large portion of that budget seems to be allocated on artificial intelligence and research and development. What do you think is behind this decision initially, as the government has been seeking to, foster new growth engines to sort of boost the economy? And the president also promised a lot of budget will go to many different fields, such as children, low-income households. What are your takes on those fields?
Yeah, when you look at the order of his speech, the order of theme has been arranged as follows, starting from the AI R&D investment and the AI-related security and the defense issues, and then AI-related education. Then he go into some kind of welfare-related arenas, such as elderly people and the basic subsidy for some low-income family household. And finally, the education is also related with some AI issues. Then, to that regard, my understanding and the impact from the lower income people's demand increase that much helps the economy grow. And he focused on to deliver some kind of future prospect and the future hope, and to increase the people's consumer sentiment. But when you look at the consumer sentiment, according to the Bank of Korea, the overall composite is quite 109 points or so, which is a little bit higher. But when you go into details, people still have some complaint and some insecurity and uncertainty about the current living standard. So this part, maybe if we have spent too much on some AI-related issues, that could increase the people's anticipation and the expectation level, then we might end up with a sudden collapse. That is really a realistic threat. Therefore, be prepared, to be prepared for such a sudden decrease of the expectations. So that should be well managed through some welfare increase, and then taking care of the low income and some who are in a disadvantaged position within the population.
Right, absolutely. We'll have to see if the budget proposal that President Lee gave details today will pass the National Assembly and, in a way, boost the domestic economy. All right, Professor Song, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
In other news, the United States is pushing to impose new sanctions on ships suspected of violating the UN Security Council resolutions for illegally exporting North Korean coal and iron ore to China. However, with an unanimous decision needed by the permanent members of the UN Security Council, China and Russia are likely to veto such a move. Our Lee Seung-jae explains more.
The United States has moved to impose new sanctions on 7 ships accused of violating United Nations Security Council resolutions by smuggling North Korean coal and iron ore. According to Reuters, Washington will soon ask the UN North Korea Sanctions Committee to blacklist the vessels, which allegedly transported the banned minerals to China and other destinations. A senior U.S. official said North Korea earns between $200 and $400 million annually through such illegal exports, which are used to fund its nuclear and missile programs. The official also revealed that in May and June, a North Korean vessel named Shinpyeong 6 transferred coal to a Sierra Leone flagged ship called Fly Free on the high seas, later offloading at China's Weifang port. However, to enact the sanctions, all UN Security Council members must agree unanimously. But with China and Russia both having close diplomatic ties to Pyongyang and holding veto powers, the proposal faces steep obstacles. If adopted, the 7 ships could be barred from entering ports worldwide, and related shipping firms or individuals could face asset freezes and travel bans. Analysts say the move underscores Washington's effort to tighten financial pressure on the Kim Jong-un regime amid renewed concerns over North Korea's weapons development and deepening ties with Moscow and Beijing. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, who is currently in Seoul, visited the joint security area near the border with his South Korean counterpart An Kyu-baek. The two officials are scheduled to sit down for a meeting today, which is expected to cover plans to build a nuclear-powered submarine and the transfer of wartime operational control. Our Park Jun-an has the details.
The defense chiefs of South Korea and the United States visited the demilitarized zone along the North Korean border on Monday, marking the first joint visit by the defense chiefs of the two countries in 8 years. During the meeting, they received a briefing on current operations at Observation Post OLED, located just 25 meters from the military demarcation line, and later visited the conference facility at the JSA Inter-Korean Troops Village of Panmunjom. Minister An highlighted the DMZ's role and emphasized the significance of the visit.
The DMZ is the very front line, but it's also where the Panmunjom Declaration was signed and where the meeting between President Trump and Kim Jong-un took place. Because of this dual nature, it carries great symbolic significance.
This event set the stage for Tuesday's 57th Security Consultative Meeting, the highest level South Korea-U.S. defense consultative body for discussing and coordinating major military policies. Top agenda items that are likely to be discussed during the meeting include South Korea's pursuit of nuclear-powered submarines, wartime operational control transition, increase in defense spending, and U.S. forces' strategic flexibility. Discussions on nuclear-powered submarines will build upon last week's Gyeongju summit, where President Lee Jae-myung called for the production of nuclear propulsion vessels, and U.S. President Donald Trump gave his approval. Defense budget increases are also likely to be on the agenda, as South Korea plans to raise spending to 3.5% of GDP by 2035, reportedly with U.S. support. Strategic flexibility for U.S. forces in Korea is expected to reaffirm the 2006 joint statement, balancing global roles while respecting Seoul's stance against regional involvement without public consent. At the military committee meeting held earlier, the Joint Chiefs reported meaningful progress on the transfer of operational control and agreed that deterrence should extend beyond the peninsula to regional stability. Today's meeting's outcomes are expected to reaffirm the two countries' partnership amid evolving North Korean threats and Indo-Pacific dynamics. Park Jun-an, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's consumer inflation hit a 15-month high in October, rising 2.4% year-on-year, according to the Ministry of Data and Statistics. Inflation had dipped to 1.7% in August before rebounding to 2.1% in September. Prices for agricultural and fishery products jumped 3.1%, pushing overall inflation up by 0.25 percentage points. Processed food and petroleum products also added upward pressure on prices, rising 3.5% and 4.8% respectively. October's inflation is the highest since the 2.6% recorded in July of last year. And Samsung Electronics has been ordered to pay $191.4 million in damages to Pictiva Displays for infringing 2 U.S. patents related to OLED technology. The ruling was handed down by a federal jury in Texas on Monday. Pictiva, based in Ireland and owned by Key Patent Innovations, argued that Samsung's Galaxy phones, TVs, and other devices used its patented methods for improving resolution, brightness, and power efficiency. The jury sided with Pictiva, whose managing director said the verdict validates the strength of its intellectual property. Samsung has not yet commented on the verdict. The case is among several recent large patent awards against Samsung in the same Texas court.
Good morning, I'm Chi Ji-hyun, and this is The World Now. Starting in Afghanistan, a 6.3 magnitude earthquake has killed at least 20 people and injured more than 640 others. The quake struck early Monday morning local time, shaking the northern part of the country and destroying hundreds of homes. Hospitals are treating dozens of people in critical condition, and rescuers say the number of casualties is still rising. Local authorities also report damage to a major historic mosque, though the structure remains standing. The Taliban government says emergency teams are working in affected areas and the United Nations has begun delivering aid. However, rescue efforts are being slowed by blocked roads and poor communication in mountain villages. In the United States, as the government shutdown enters its second month, the Trump administration says it will provide reduced food aid to more than 42 million Americans. The decision follows a court order from federal judges in Massachusetts and Rhode Island, directing the Department of Agriculture to use $5.25 billion in emergency funds to make partial payments to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps. The SNAP program, which supports low-income households, normally costs around $8 billion per month, but has been unfunded since October 1st. The reduced food stamp payments are expected to reach families later this week. In Rome, rescue teams have freed a worker trapped for nearly 12 hours after a partial collapse of a medieval tower undergoing restoration. The man was pulled from the rubble of the Torre dei Conti and taken to hospital later on Monday. The tower, built in the 13th century, first gave way late in the morning on Monday, injuring another worker before part of the structure collapsed again during the rescue. Authorities have cordoned off the area as engineers assess what caused the collapse. In Paris, fast fashion retailer Shein's first permanent store is set to open on Wednesday amid a fierce backlash. The planned store inside the prestigious 19th century BHV department store building has sparked outrage and protest from workers and ethical brands, warning it undermines France's anti-fast fashion laws and Paris's progressive image. Several French companies, including Disneyland Paris, have withdrawn partnerships, while city officials called the move, quote, a provocation.
We needed that warm coat for the commute this morning. It was much colder in inland regions, and this cold means that frost is likely forming and water is freezing across the inland and mountainous areas. But highs will go up fast, jumping 10 to 20 degrees Celsius by the afternoon. And this huge recovery means we'll have a major daily temperature swing of around 15 degrees Celsius in most parts. So the cold will ease up starting this afternoon. Temperatures are recovering to seasonal averages or going up even higher tomorrow afternoon for a beautiful late autumn weather. And this afternoon, Seoul will be getting up to 16 degrees Celsius. Daegu, Gyeongju, Gwangju will be getting up to 19 degrees under sunny skies in most parts of Korea. Large daily temperature swings will continue, so please ensure you dress in layers and take care of your health as the weather remains inconsistent this week. Meanwhile, Jeju Island will see frequent rainfall throughout the week and even into the weekend.
Now that's all we have for this morning. Arirang News will be back at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching.